Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Irish Warriors MMA show. Today we have the unorthodox nutritionist, Mike Leng. How are you doing today, Mike?
Much for having me on.
Happy days, happy days. So, Mike, a big question I have about nutrition, especially for those high-level combat sports athletes, for an athlete to train kind of twice in one day, how would they go about that? What type of foods should they be eating in order to not feel sluggish? So, let's say you have a guy who will wake up and then he'll train early in the morning. He'll have a meal in between and then he'll train again at nighttime. What should he be eating?
So, excuse me, it all depends on if the athlete is in camp versus out of camp and in an off season. So, if they're in camp and obviously they've got a fight or a competition, etc., coming up, then it's very much kind of dictated on where they are in that process, how much weight they've got to come down before we start weight cutting, etc. So, that can be a bit individualistic versus somebody who's not in camp because then they've got a lot more leeway as it takes. They're not monitoring the weight as much.
Yeah.
But what you're essentially looking for is both, is to be able to fuel those workouts adequately. So basically, if they're training early in the morning, which is normally something like road work, running, pad work, skill development, things like that, it's very rare that we're going to have like hard sparring, hard wrestling and stuff as a first session. I don't know many coaches who'd ever program that. So we're looking to get up, have some form of fast-acting carbohydrate and some kind of protein source. Depending on how close it is to them training versus waking up, they may be in liquid form, just because it's much easier for them to wake up, ingest it on the way to the gym, etc. If they do have a bit of time, then you're looking at maybe, again, solid, quick acting foods. This may be things like muffins or bagels with jam. It may be things like kids' cereal or a more like fast acting like Cocoa Pops, Rice Krispies, things like that. Honey's a really good one. Fruits are especially good. These kind of light, fast acting, easily digestible carbohydrates that we can have. Then we'll have training. And then after training, most of my athletes are having between 2 to 3 meals before their evening training. And again, what we're looking to do here is top up glycogen, which is carbohydrate that's stored in your muscle and your liver. So we're looking again to have regular carbohydrate feedings as we come into that evening session. Now, when you are in camp versus obviously out of camp, that dictates how much that we can, how much of your calorie allowance say we can dictate towards that, which is why you'll hear so many coaches and so many nutritionists like go down that how important carbohydrate intake is and things like that. It is vitally important. It's one of the macronutrients that we're always trying to hold as high as possible all the way through camp, because then that'll allow high intensity training and obviously recovery from that training. So it's why you can hear myself and so many others like harping on about it so much.
Okay, and what would be a big misconception then when it comes to nutrition? What would be something you'd always see combat athletes who are not knowledgeable like this? What would you see them doing that you'd go, "Oh no, stay away from that."
So obviously it's very, very different. Nutrition's one of those weird fields that's quite culty. What you'll generally see is people saying that this is the only way to do something, and therefore everything else is rubbish, and that doesn't work. That'd be like, the MMA equivalent of saying jiu-jitsu is the only martial art that works and no other martial art works. It's just not true. However, the most common thing that I would see across most athletes is they are under eating. Um, Most kind of weight class athletes are obsessed with the weight. They will weigh themselves after every session. There's like this thought that they want to be as light as possible all the time. They are weighing themselves like before and after training to see how much weight they've lost. Like there's the real obsession with it. And then what comes with that is a fear to eat sufficient amount of calories, and especially a fear to eat like a good amount of carbohydrates. There's so much kind of in the that's perpetuated in the fitness kind of space that how bad carbohydrates are. It's very like a lot of people, carnivore diet. Joe Rogan's a big proponent of that kind of stuff, and obviously a lot of fighters and athletes watch and listen to Joe Rogan. So there's always this kind of fear to eat adequately and have carbohydrate. But if you think about well, like say if we use MMA as an example, like an MMA fight in MMA training is the expression of a skill set that you've spent building up. Now, it is dictated on you being able to display that skill by having adequate fuel to be able to do that as to your maximum ability. Like, so if you aren't adequately fueled, you will never ever be able to put forward a good performance in training and improve and for fights on the night and things like that. You get so many people who say they go to competitions and they say, "Oh, it felt like somebody else was in there tonight. Like, I don't feel the same as what I did in training. I just didn't have that pop and things like that." It's because they starve themselves in camp versus what they should be eating normally. So the thing I see most probably across the board is that people are just scared to eat and fuel like their workouts properly.
That's quite interesting because I've been doing it completely wrong. Like I'd usually wake up in the morning, I'd go train, I'd do my first training session. I'd have a protein shake after, and then I'd have lunch, and then I'd have another kind of medium-sized meal just after training itself.
Yeah.
So I'd only really be eating two big meals a day and then a liquid meal. So what you're saying is I should be eating quite a lot more then.
Yeah, ideally. Now, it depends on obviously what your goals are. Where you've got something called, which is a big discussed thing, is the number of meals in a day. You know, people have heard, your parents talking about like 3 square meals a day. You've heard like more people on the bodybuilding type side of it talking about eating, 6 to 8 meals per day. You've got like the fasting guys who say that you should be eating 1 or 2 bigger meals per day. So what the science actually tells us is if all things are equated, your calories, your macros, and things like that, when it comes to, say, a weight loss perspective, it doesn't really matter how many meals that you eat. It's completely down to personal preference. Now, where that changes slightly for athletes is that we're looking to be able to not only just like if we're looking to lose weight, we need to maximize performance. This is why we're looking at things maximizing things like recovery and maximizing our ability to perform. So that is why I generally like quite regular feedings of protein and carbohydrate, especially if you're doing 2 a days, because regular feedings of protein is going to help with protein synthesis. I can never say that bloody word. Um, which is going to help with recovery, muscle turnover, and protein turnover, things like that. So it's going to help your muscles recover and add muscle, obviously, is what we're looking for there as well. And regular carbohydrate feeding is going to give us like A, the recovery, and B, like to top our energy stores for more productive training. Like, and that's the key there. It's productive training. It's anybody can go into a gym and have terrible training and not be able to have like productive training sessions. We're not after junk trading. What we're after is like skill requirement, like like skill acquisition of learning something and being able to apply that in a very, very stressful environment. Like probably the most stressful that there is for displaying a memorized skill is somebody punching you in the face as you try and do it. So if you are not adequately fueled, you will never ever be able to properly like gain that level of skill and be able to demonstrate it. So yeah, I would definitely say that yourself would benefit much more from having some meals in between. They don't need to be massive meal. Like a lot of people, especially like after and before training, can't stomach big meals. There's quite a lot of people who, especially when they finish training, they just don't fancy eating food at all. Which is
Yeah.
obviously because of the nervous system's ramp right up, especially if they've done like hard sparring or wrestling and things like that. So it may be a case of eating like smaller meals, but just on a bit more of a regular basis might help you out a bit more.
So now in terms of supplements, I keep it very little supplements. I take creatine, I take ashwagandha, and then protein. What type of supplements would you recommend for a combat sports athlete in particular?
So supplements is one of those things, again, the word is there, it's supplement the diet. So what we're looking at is some,
So yeah, we're back onto supplements then.
yeah, so the two main things that we're looking for supplements is A, how can we make your life easier in certain ways? So talking like previously there about using like liquid carbohydrate supplements and things like that because it's easier to get in. Or B, are we looking to kind of plug a hole nutritionally? And this is more like health wise and things like that, things that we're after. So we're trying to, if we're plugging holes, make things better from a performance or a recovery standpoint. Now, this is very kind of individual, depending on what the individual needs. But certain things that I think all people would benefit from is first protein supplement, protein shake. Obviously, it's just filtered milk. It's just food, but it will make getting your protein requirement in so much easier. There's a million like brands out there. There's so many great flavors now. Like, so it's just makes everyone's life a lot easier. I would probably say a vitamin D supplement, especially if you're in the UK or where you guys are. We never ever see the sun, like especially this time of
I'm
year.
actually in the UK at the moment. I'm living in Glasgow.
All right, so even worse. So you definitely never see the sun. So that's going to help a lot from a lot of perspective, health perspective, hormonal perspective, how we feel. A lot of people have probably heard of something called like SAD, SAD disorder, which is like seasonal affective disorder, where people just feel sad and like down in the winter and things like that. That'll massively help with things like that. For grapplers and MMA guys, I would recommend like a joint product. Things like fish oil is really good here, high quality fish oil. Curcumin is really, really good here as well, which is going to help with like joint health, things like that. These aren't essentials. These I'm just kind of rattling off things that may help people. Collagen is useless as a muscle building protein, but it is very, very good from the standing point of tendon health and things like that, which is, really good for grapplers, people who wrestle, etc. A multivitamin is always a really good idea, a good quality multivitamin, purely from a health perspective, just because you can get everything that you need from foods, absolutely. But I don't know many people who are literally tracking all their vitamin and micronutrient
Yeah,
needs
because you
down
need to
through
get
a
that
chronometer.
tested, I think. Yeah, you need to like get a special DNA test to see what you're deficient in for that, I believe.
Yeah, you can deficiencies, or you can basically run this a free app that you can get, which is called a chronometer, which basically, if you input all your foods in, like you would just with a normal calculator, it will tell you exactly where you are, like in daily basis of like deficiencies of food and stuff. So that's really useful if you want to kind of go into that level of detail. But a good multivitamin will help plug those gaps and things like that. Then, from a training perspective, probably things like a carbohydrate powder is really, really good. The two that I would probably recommend is branch cyclic dextrin and palmitos, which are both very, very fast-acting carbohydrates. Won't bloat the stomach up and things like that, so it won't make you feel full and bloated. And you can have those around training that will give you basically like instant energy, which is really, really good. Um, and then beyond that, it just depends on the individual of things that we're kind of looking to do. So there's a whole stuff kind of like nootropic stuff, sleep stuff. Obviously, you talked there, ashwagandha, like KSM66 is like really, really good. Um, and a bunch of other stuff. So it depends on the individual needs and like how we can help them. So beyond those kind of very basics, it just depends on the specific person, really.
So this was so yeah, I can't speak. Yeah, so just creatine as well then. I think with
Oh yeah, of course.
creatine,
Yeah, massively. Creatine is probably the most proven and tested supplement ever. At one point, when it very, very first came out and started to gain a lot of notoriety, WADA nearly actually banned it as a supplement. It was like on their list, like kind of to watch. Creatine is not only brilliant from like power, energy, muscle recovery, etc. There's loads and loads of data now that's coming out that it's like neuroprotective. So if you've got things like neuro like degenerative disease in your family, like it's really, really good. Obviously, if you're a fighter getting punched in the head quite a lot, you want to kind of, protect your brain as much as possible. So that again is like there's a load of great data on that as well. So it's a fantastic supplement. You don't need to do all like the loading and stuff that people talk about, like in supplement brands. 5 grams a day of basic creatine monohydrate. Doesn't matter when you take it. There's a bit of evidence that says it's slightly better absorbed if you take it like during or after a workout.
yeah.
But as it's a saturation product, like which basically means that it builds effectiveness over time as your cells get saturated with it. Just 5 grams a day, anytime that you like, you can take it in pretty much anything. It doesn't have a taste. So yeah, it's a fantastic supplement.
So now the science of weight cutting, it's a really hot topic, especially with combat sports, and I believe with MMA, more and more guys are now starting to cut weight, especially in the amateur levels. They're starting to do that. What is a really common mistake you see with athletes in their diet coming up to a weight cut, and how would you guide them through this process effectively without inhibiting or limiting their performance? Yeah, limiting their performance.
So the first thing that I see all the time is basically just taking on a weight cut and having no idea what they're actually doing. cobbling together some kind of plan from stuff that they've seen on YouTube and social media and some stuff that the coach says, and just trying to like have this like cobbled approach of how they're going to do it, even though they've never done it before, ever done a test cut or anything like that, and they're going to do it before a fight. Weight cutting is incredibly serious business. Like more people have been killed through bad weight cuts than they have in MMA and people elbowing them in the head. Like it is a serious business. It can. I've seen countless people hospitalized. Thankfully, I've never seen like a death or anything, but there are quite a number of deaths out there. You know, where people have pushed it too far. You know, the sport is full of horror stories of people just trying to do too much. So, what we need to look at is first is what we mean by weight cutting. Weight cutting isn't the diet and coming in. Weight cutting specifically itself is manipulating your body's weight, scale weight, over a very short period of time to weigh in. This is normally done through things like food depletion in the gut, glycogen depletion in the muscle, and water manipulation of the body. Which means like to a certain well, it is dehydrating the body, and then being able to put all these things back in time for a fight. To do this safely, you need to have an adequate amount of time between the weight cut itself and your weighing in and the fight. You'll notice that a lot of big organizations and things like that, UFC, One Championship, things like that, they'll do day before weigh-ins, which gives athletes 24 hours or plus an adequate time to refuel. You see on a lot of like amateur scene and things like that, they will have same day weigh-ins. And it may be on the morning and they fight on a night, or at lunchtime they fight on a night, or in some cases in some sports it's right before the compete. Don't do weight cuts for these. Just don't do them. You're not going to be able to adequately, even if you do make the weight, you will not recover adequately to be able to perform your best. Unfortunately, a lot of people kind of see the weight cut as in the fight itself. They gain a little victory by making weight. That's not the fight. The fight is what happens afterwards. And if you can't recover between the two, nobody's giving you a medal or a clap on the back for making weight and losing. You know what I mean? So we need to make sure that we can adequately recover. So same day weigh-ins and things like that should be a dieting process and maybe a bit of manipulation of things like food in the gut and things like that, but no dehydration, no kind of depleted in glycogen and stuff like that, because you simply won't put those things back into your body quick enough to be able to perform.
Because I
Um,
know now with the Republic of Ireland, with amateur shows, they do same day weigh-ins. But up in the north, with amateur shows, they actually do day befores now.
yeah,
So it's a big difference that, and I've noticed the same guys who are going to be cutting for those day before weigh-ins, when it is a show in the Republic, they then have to cut again and do that
yeah,
same day weigh-in, and it's I don't know how much effect would that have on a fighter's performance on a scale of 1 to 10 in that fight
10,
if it's same day? 10?
10, massive,
Oh wow.
especially if you do cut. So what you're looking at is for every like 1% that you're dehydrated, you will lose anywhere to 7 of 10% in performance. So that kind of gives you an idea there of where you're kind of going to go. If we just use from a dehydration standpoint and not look at the other factors for now, if you think your ability to just think is progressed on like having an adequate amount of water in your body, you're about to participate in something that requires decision making at the highest level with very high consequences, and just thinking slower than the other person is terrible. We've all been like sparring and stuff like that where the other guy just thinks quicker than you and it's horrendous. Like if you couple that in with a fight and you've been dehydrated, it's a massive thing. So performance is going to take a dip there. Even if you can think adequately, your muscles won't be able to engage and fire quickly. You won't be able to produce as much force. So things like wrestling, takedowns, you feel so much weaker. When it comes to striking, your power that you'll be able to deliver is so much weaker. And not only that, but your ability to take damage drops massively as well. You do not want to be getting punched and elbowed in the head when you are dehydrated, because the ability to kind of protect yourself in those situations like drops massively as well. So I would never do it. Like if somebody came to me and they had a same day like weigh-in for a fight and they wanted to do a weight cut on it, I would not take them as a client. And I get tons of them, people who want to do it, or even people who want last minute stuff to come and go, oh, I've got a fight in, a week and I've got 10 kilos to lose. Like, I never ever work with those guys. I only work with people that have done like a full camp with myself. So
So,
yeah, it's a
so a bit of a question about that with the chin kind of degrading. Is there obviously there's more chance of getting a concussion in that short-term knockout? Is there also more chance of long-term injury if you get knocked out and you're dehydrated? Would that
it
be
is.
a yeah, oh wow.
So obviously, I'm not a doctor and I don't pretend to be one. But obviously, the brain is surrounded in like a liquid sac that protects it from the skull, etc. If that is lessened in any kind of way, or the chances of CTE and things like that go up massively. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a lot of people who are really putting their health at risk for what is essentially a serious hobby for them. The number of people who will actually become pro MMA people and things like that and be able to make a good career out of it versus how many people do MMA is a small percentage. So, and even then, the people who are going to be pros at it will treat it as they are pros and do day before wins and day before cuts, etc. So, yeah, I wouldn't do it at all. I wouldn't put somebody's health in risk of it, and you're not going to get the performance jump that you think you're going to by doing a same day weight cut. You will perform much better just by dieting into it, and then after the weigh-in, like fueling up as best you can, you will perform so much better, which is the name of the game ultimately. Um, so, uh, and then we've got day before weigh-ins is a bit of a different kettle of fish. So those you can, we'll generally look at the last kind of week of weight cut. We're probably going to weight cut probably about 10 to 15% of a person's body weight will bring off during this time, and then probably put on roughly about 15 to 20% of their body weight after the fact. Um, it's a like what we call like a high touch process. It's a lot of communication between me and the client. It's not just me going, right, there's your wake up plan, I'll see you after the fight. It doesn't work like that because there's everything changes in every single fight. So there is like an overarching plan, but based on the results that we get, how we're dropping weight, how we're feeling, the rate that it's coming off, tools at hand, do we have a bath, do we have a sauna, what it is, dictates obviously we talk regularly and then we adjust that plan going in, which is why again, it's so scary to me when I hear people are just bodging a plan themselves because your ability to think, like, A, you have no experience anyway of doing it, and B, when you start to go through the cut, your decision making ability just drops massively. Like, you don't know if you're making the right decision. You haven't got somebody who can kind of steer the ship. If you've got a coach who's done it with a load of athletes and things like that and have got a lot of experience, then that's really good and they can help you steer ultimately. But you need somebody to make like those kind of decisions so we can tweak things as you go. That way, you're going to be able to weigh in safely. You're going to be coming in on target, and then be able to like fuel yourself up massively on the other end to be able like to perform. And doing it right basically removes any kind of like stress of you making weight and things like that. Like I've never ever had anyone missing 16 years. So it's just the ability to kind of like handle that off to somebody else because then you're going to make weight, you're going to refuel properly, and you're going to be able to put on your best performance of the night. And if you can do it safely, and it can be done safely, it's one of the evils of the sport. Um, Obviously, it needs to be done. But again, please, if anybody's using or thinking about doing it, use somebody who has experience in this. If you're doing it yourself and it's the only option, please do a test weight cut before you do it to see how you do, like a couple of weeks out, because it can be really, really dangerous. So, like, that's my kind of one warning for people.
So what do you think in the past kind of 4 to 3 years, a lot of these high level, especially in the UFC fighters, have gone instead of cutting weight just the day before the weigh-ins, they'll go through their normal day before and then they'll wake up at like 4 or 5 in the morning and then start the cut from then.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Again, it's absolutely like it's a perfectly fine strategy. A lot of these guys, especially at the top, there's a load of great coaches out there. Myself, shout out to Jordan Sullivan, who's excellent. Paul Reed, who's a British guy, who's excellent. There's some great guys out there doing some brilliant work. And everything's always tailored around the athlete. So they are doing that strategy for a specific reason for that athlete. they want them to spend as least amount of time in this kind of stressful state of making weight as possible. They don't want to kind of having them do long, drawn out baths and cuts over a few days and things like that, because you just dig in a massive ditch of recovery that's hard for the athletes to recover from. And the more that you do weight cuts with athletes, the more that you know what's best for them. What you'll generally find is when you're looking at these kind of weight cuts, these are more particularly done by to male athletes and not female, just because of how they recover. They just recover a little bit better with it. So you can kind of go like harder for shorter periods of time rather than like a longer, more calculated approach. So for the guys that they do it with, I think it's a great strategy. But again, they know who they can do it with, and more importantly, who not to do it with. So yeah, I think it is a great strategy.
Well, speaking of interesting strategies with weight cuts, have you ever seen how Ilya Taporia does it?
I haven't
With
actually not.
with the day before, he'll do the weight cut, but he'll drink a liter of wine. So the
Yeah,
weight cut then goes easier, and then he wakes up dehydrated, and
yeah,
he's a bit tipsy during the losing the water, so it's a bit easier, and then it's all fun and games, and then he weighs in.
yeah. I've seen that quite a lot because obviously alcohol's a diuretic, which basically means it just helps you become dehydrated.
Yeah.
The reason that you're hungover a lot of the times if you had a drink is because you are dehydrated. Um, but it's a bit of a like I wouldn't do it. Like, and I don't know any, you know, like I don't know why he's doing it or things, but it would never be something that I would recommend for a client. It just adds so many unknown factors into it that can be just done without adding alcohol. So it would never be something I personally do. Um, but again, I don't know the full story. I don't want him or one of his coaches to ever hear me say that I'm slagging him off because I don't know the full story. But I would never do it, put it that way. So,
Yeah, yeah. So recovery is essential for high performing athletes. What role does nutrition play in accelerating recovery and minimizing injuries with the more important thing? What kind of foods, I know carbohydrates, proteins for recovering injury, but how would you go about that?
nutrition plays a massive part in recovery. So the three kind of things that you're kind of looking for from recovery is that you are looking to obviously recover from ability to go back in the gym and display that same level of performance again and again. You want recovery to basically like lower the amount of stress that you're having between like recovery management includes stress management. This is, for normal people, this is reducing maybe stress from work, like anything you've got going on at home, like, managing those outside stresses. For people who are just doing, high level athletes who are doing it all the time, it's again just managing stresses around camps, if they've got media promotion, if they've got their own social stuff, like all that kind of thing. Um, and then you've got one for injury mitigation as well, which is a massive part of recovery. Now, as far as nutrition goes, it's ultimately important to recover and fuel you up for the next session. Like nutrition plays the biggest hand in that. Shortly followed by things like sleep. Sleep is such a massive one. Like, pe if people realized how important and good sleep is for you, they would like sleep so much more. Like, I've got sleep targets for all my clients and stuff like that. Everyone that I know monitors sleep, how much sleep, people are getting, restorative sleep, things like that. It's all tracked. Massive, massive thing. Um, and then when it comes to actually like injury prevention, things like that, I wouldn't say that nutrition plays a big part in that. Apart from a good, healthy, well-rounded diet will help you be more healthy overall. Especially if we include things like, a good adequate of fat intake and things like that helps with hormone production, helps with, keeping tendons healthy that we've talked about previously, that kind of thing. Being hydrated is a massive one. It's tendon health for a lot of the time with athletes. Muscle recovers quite quickly, really, but it's tendons that really take a bit of a beating. So we've got to kind of look at those things. So nutrition plays a massive part in it, but there's also other factors that we need to look at when it comes to recovery. It's a bit of a multi-sided coin. If you were going to focus on anything, again, it would be proper nutrition, sleep, and then stress management. When it comes to stress management, there's loads of different things for it. You know, you could find journaling really useful. You could find meditation really useful. You could be finding like things in your life that are causing you a huge amount of stress. Can you remove them or manage them better? You know what I mean? Like
I think
you're
ashwagandha
very
is
rare.
quite good for
Yeah,
helping with stress because it
massively
lowers that
so.
cortisol level, which is,
Yeah.
well, it's a stress hormone.
Yeah, it
So
is.
I think
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. And that's kind of what we're looking at managing that, stress hormone cortisol. If we get a buildup of that, especially when it comes to weight cuts and things like that, if your cortisol's running really, really high, then you're going to get a massive negative feedback loop with that. So yeah, cortisol management's a massive, massive thing. There is certain supplements that you can take to do that. Ashwagandha obviously is one of them. You've got obviously if you're doing it the KM 666, theanine's a really good one for it. Lemon bark extract's a good one for it. Yeah, there's a few that you can do basically to help manage it. So you need to kind of look at recovery as all those things. I would say stay away from anything that's really faddy. So ice baths are a massive one, at the moment. They've massively been debunked completely. They're no more recovery than having like a normal hot bath or a nap. You know what I mean? You would get more recovery from having a nap than you would like a cold plunge. A lot of people do it from a mental health and feeling better and a discipline type factor. That's like a different thing altogether. But if you're doing it from like a recovery standpoint, the better things that you can do with your time and your money. It's like, if anything, actually, when it comes to muscle building and muscle recovery, there's actually a negative of doing it close to training. So, again, so that kind of stuff, electroshock therapy, is like,
saunas.
yeah, yeah. Saunas, there's quite a lot of good data for sauna and red light saunas actually can help with like stress management, recovery, and things like that. They're a bit of one. I've seen a lot of kind of electroshock kind of stuff that's just rubbish. That cup in thing is rubbish. Doesn't do absolutely anything at all. The best things that you can probably do for your recovery again is have like a good, well balanced meal and a sleep. So, which unfortunately that doesn't sound fancy. It doesn't get your likes on social media to say have a nap, but it's unfortunately the thing that'll do you the most good.
So we'll end. We're about to run out of time, so I'll end it with one last question, more of a personal one. Well, like throughout kind of last year, I took niacin, and now I've noticed that it's in most like energy drinks and stuff. I found that I would actually have a higher performance level when I took niacin. What does niacin do as a vitamin, and how does it help or to have negative effects?
Yeah. So niacin basically is one of those things that will allow like help like blood flow and performance and stuff like that. It absolutely can help performance. Something quite similar that people notice they have a similar reaction to, but it does a bit of a different thing. Is something called beta alanine.
Yeah,
Um,
the pins and needles.
so yeah, yeah, basically that. But it is a great product. It's just one of those ones that are a bit down, say, on the supplement tier list. But it absolutely does well. What you'll sometimes people don't like taking it because with niacin they get something called a niacin flush. They'll go like really red and kind of feel a bit prickly and
Yeah, that's
like
what I'd get.
yeah. So the difference between niacin and beta when you have those reactions is that you'll probably have them quite a lot of the time with niacin, but when it comes to beta that'll decrease over time. Because beta is just like creatine, a saturation product. So what you'll generally find is a lot of people put them in like pre-workouts and things like that because a lot of people perceive that the tingliness is what it's working, but it's not. It's just because you're deficient in beta. When you're actually, it's doing its job and you're fully saturated, you won't feel those tingles. But a lot of people then think, oh, well, it's not working, so I'll take something else or I'll take more and things like that, which isn't the case. What we're actually looking is to that tingling going away over time. But niacin's a different thing earlier, but yeah, absolutely fine supplement. Again, same as beta proven to have very, very good effects. It just comes down to the individual whether they are okay with the slight side effects of, the redness and the tingling and things like that.
Okay. Well, that's that. We've ran out of time here. So we've about 3 minutes left. Thank you very much for coming on today, Mike. I'm very, very grateful. This has been really, really informative.